Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Molero.
And we are...
Get this?
The FAIRtax Guys. And we are the only weekly television program dedicated to the passage of the fair tax in the country. We're glad to have you aboard.
Yep.
Coming to you live from Big Daddy Studios in Gainesville, Florida. Streaming live on the Facebook page. And let me get this going on the computer here. Streaming live on the Facebook page and also on excluded.tv. You need to check us out there if there's stuff that the big social media companies are excluding from your viewing experience on their platforms. Check it out on Excluded TV and you will find it. And that's good stuff.
Great.
All right. Go ahead. My computer here is still giving me an issue here. I got to work on it here for a second.
I had to refresh the page there. Anyways, it's election time. We've got less than 2 weeks before the federal, state, and local elections. Lots of people running for office at all levels, okay? You've got congressmen. Every member of Congress is up for election every 2 years, and 1/3 of the senators. And then you got governor's races and things like that. And we've told people, if you're a fair tax proponent as a candidate and somebody's trying to attack you because of your stance on the fair tax, there are ways to handle it. We started this rogues gallery, is what Bob called it, on our Facebook page. We found another incident, although this is much more mild.
I got to fix my props here. Y'all keep going.
Yeah. So anyway, that's going to be the thrust of today's episode. If a candidate who is a proponent of the fair tax, or maybe a current co-sponsor, and their opponent starts lying about the fair tax, how do you respond? Bob and I have done this before, and we're ready to do it again and give these folks advice. Because
I guess it's a good thing that we don't have too many entries in our rogues gallery. We've been asking people for the past several weeks to send us any dishonest ads that they see in their local area. Of course, we're here in Florida. We see a lot of the Florida stuff ourselves.
Yeah.
But so far, no one has sent us anything to highlight a dishonest ad that's running in another part of the country. So we'll file that under no news is good news.
Yeah,
Hopefully that means that people are learning that attacking a candidate for his support of the fair tax is not a good idea. Ask Mr. Putnam here in Florida what happened when he did that.
That's right.
And there's another, he started to say again, there's another lady here in Florida, there's a congressional race where this is not a dishonest ad that's running on radio or television.
Right.
This was just barely a passing mention on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
But we do want to highlight this lady and say, wait a minute, we got to tell, if you're going to tell half the truth, we're going to tell the whole story and the rest of the story, as Mr. Harvey would say.
That's right. And I'm going to start with an email we got from one of our supporters here, and we've heard from him before, John Roman.
Okay.
All right. He said, the fair tax is easy for our opponents to demagogue. In cases like this, I like to say, take advantage of the fact that the tax code, the current tax code, is even easier to demagogue. Well, you don't have to demagogue the current tax code. You just have to tell what's actually happening.
You tell the truth about that, and you got a problem. You have to make stuff up about the fair tax.
Yeah. So, and our responses to any verbal or written attack should be a counterattack on the code. And he's right. I mean, what is it about the IRS that you're so in love with? I mean, why do you want to keep this tax code that is so horrible for so many people?
I don't.
So anyways, thanks, John, for that thought. I thought it was worth mentioning.
And let me mention real quickly that we are on live here on Wednesday. This is just after 11:34 a.m. Eastern Time on October the 24th, Wednesday. So if you are catching the live version here rather than the archived version or one of the audio-only versions that come up after the fact, we would love to hear from you. 888-787-8023 is our phone number. I imagine Gabe will pop that up on the screen here in a minute. But again, 888-787-8023 is the number if you'd like to talk live to the FAIRtax Guys. We would love to talk to you. And let me mention something real quick. We got a comment already on our Facebook page from Michael Alcoin suggesting that you put a FAIRtax business card in the Halloween basket when you're handing out candy to the kiddies. the kids bring that home and their parents say, what's that? You know, what's somebody bringing it? And hey, why not? You can get them at the FAIRtax logo store.
Giving you a candy and a tip.
And hello, Thomas Worrell, and hello, Sandy Goodell. Is that Goodell or Goodall? Whichever. You'll have to tell me which that is.
Yep.
But appreciate you both joining us this morning.
Yep.
Okay.
Now Randy is with us as usual.
Yeah,
Thank you,
now
Randy.
that I've thoroughly derailed your train, you can start over again.
Okay. Well, anyways, and we're not trying to make this in all Florida, except that we see, Bob and I see what's going on here in Florida. If you have news about any other race anywhere in the country in which somebody is trying to lie about the fair tax, I'm not going to use fancy flowery words. Let us know, and we'll help. We have this one candidate, well, two candidates running, Republican and Democrat, for District 6 here in Florida. That's the one that is vacated by Ron DeSantis, who's running for governor. And Michael Waltz is a fair tax proponent. He has signed the candidate's pledge so that if he is elected, he will become a co-sponsor. We thank you for that. His opponent is Nancy Soderberg, and she is, and like Bob said, it's not a strong campaign. It's just that on a Facebook page, she responded to, Michael was saying that she wants to raise taxes. So to counter that, she said, well, he's in favor of the fair tax, which will increase, put a sales tax on everything you purchase by 23%. Okay? Well, that's only half of the story, Mrs. Soderberg. I mean, the very important part that you're leaving out there is that it totally eliminates the income tax and the IRS, okay? So there's more to the story. I responded to her post and I said, you would do well to learn more about the fair tax, because I think you'll find, if you really come to understand it, that it'll be the best thing for your constituents, whether you get elected or Mr. Waltz gets elected. So it's not like a campaign that she's running, that she's putting ads in the mail or running videos on TV or anything like that, So, but anyways, we wanted to respond to that.
Okay, got a note here from Sandy again. Says, I have several friends whose concerns are that given the current crop of power mads in Congress, they say the fair tax will never pass. They say we should start with a simple flat tax and ease it in. Now, we've heard that argument before. Here's the problem with the flat tax. This is the flat tax after it gets passed.
Yep.
This is the flat tax about a month or two after the congressional folks and the lobbyists get a hold of it.
Yeah.
And it looks remarkably much like the income tax, which is all messed up to begin with. A flat tax sounds good in theory. It will not stay flat. We have seen that before. It's the Lobbyists Complete Employment Act is what we call it.
Yeah.
So Sandy's right. She keeps trying to tell them keeping the IR in place allows them to bring this simple flat tax right back to where we are now, and it's Goodell. Okay, thank you, Sandy. I appreciate that. But that's what we're dealing with the flat tax versus the income tax. But as you were talking about, Bill Aikman saying, please talk about the value-added tax in the fair tax. Randy, I'm sure you'll get some comments on that here in just a second. He can explain it quite a good bit. But the value-added tax is what they have in Europe. And it's a tax is, as they say, value added. Every time a product, say, goes from a tree and they cut it up into lumber, and then they get the lumber and turn it into a shed, and every time something is added along the way, there's a tax, and the consumer gets a nice big hefty chunk of it right at the end of it.
That's right.
But that does not work like the fair tax at all. It's the VAT tax is a nasty idea. And the fair tax is a wonderful idea.
And we have some people in Congress that would love the idea of a VAT tax and an income tax.
That is why the fair tax is contingent upon repeal of the 16th Amendment. The 16th Amendment is what made an income tax constitutionally acceptable. Prior to that, the government had tried to put in an income tax, and the Supreme Court ruled it unconstitutional.
Right.
So they had to put in the 16th Amendment, and the fair tax, obviously, the passage of any act in Congress cannot change the Constitution.
Right.
So the fair tax revokes the statutory authority for an income tax, but it can't get rid of the 16th Amendment. But there is a provision within the fair tax saying if the 16th Amendment is not repealed during the normal constitutional amendment process, which can take up to 7 years, if that doesn't happen within 7 years, then the fair tax goes away, you get your income tax back. So we're going to make sure the fair tax is absolutely certain positive that there can never be an income tax on top of the fair tax, because fair tax goes away if the constitutional authority for imposing an income tax is not repealed.
Yeah. So, yeah. One more comment about the VAT tax. I call it a stealth tax because these changes that Bob was talking about, every step of the production, they add a little tax to it. It's stealthy. It's behind the scenes. Yes, technically it's a consumption tax, but it's behind the scenes. The consumer doesn't see it. It's not on their receipt, but it is added to the cost of the product. And Congress can still mess around with it. Say, well, you know, Mr. Congressman, the lobbyists come in, Mr. Congressman or Miss Congressman, woman, we need to change that VAT tax for this industry because we produce these really important things and so forth. And that's what will happen in Congress. They'll start messing around with the VAT tax just like they're messing around with the income tax and end up with thousands and thousands of changes. Can you imagine what our country would be with a VAT tax and an income tax? Well, let's not imagine it, all right? Let's get rid of it all and replace it with a fair tax. It's the only fair way to go.
Yeah, Sandy is mentioning quite correctly the powers that be in Washington don't want to pass it because most of their power goes out with the IRS. And that is why we have to keep reminding, that's why we're on the air week after week after week, reminding folks, hey, the Congress critters work for us, not the other way around. And if enough grassroots supporters say they want the fair tax and you're not going to get voted for, I'm not going to vote for you if you don't support the fair tax, eventually they'll get the message. So that's why it's important to share these videos, tell your friends and family about them, get as many people as you can involved on the grassroots level, because that is what it's going to take to change them. Because, you know, right now the Congress critters are listening to the lobbyists and the folks up there that have all the money. But if when it comes to choosing between votes and money, usually they'll go for the votes. So we got to make sure that enough people want the fair tax and make it clear to their Congress people that it is an issue that I vote on. If you support the fair tax, I'll vote for you. I'll work for you. I'll try to get my friends to vote for you as well, and that'll work. But if you demagogue the fair tax, we're going to hang you. That's what we're going to
have to take a different direction.
Yes. Now the Fair Tax Organization is a 501c that we cannot be political. We cannot endorse candidates. But we can tell people who support the fair tax and who doesn't.
Yeah, that's right.
And let you make up your own mind as to who you want to vote for.
And plus, the fair tax guys, we're just two retired guys talking about the fair tax on the TV and, you know, podcasts and so forth. So we can be partisan if we want.
Okay.
But we choose not to.
Comment here from John Hedges. Good morning, gentlemen. Thanks for the show. Thank you for watching. One concern that people have with the fair tax is that it may not produce enough tax revenue overall as compared to what the federal income tax brings in. Could you elaborate on that subject a bit, and what studies support the fair tax? All right. We can tell you when the fair tax was first hatched in the early 90s, it was a group of businessmen in Houston, Texas that were just deciding, you know, they spent the entire day trying to figure out how to work their business, and they realized that they were spending most of their time discussing tax consequences of their decisions versus, you know, what does it take to make our business work. Right. So they hired some economists, I mean some of the brightest and best economists from the most prestigious universities in the country, and just gave them a charge that says, hey, you guys start with this blank sheet of paper and devise for me the best tax system that you possibly can. And one of the design parameters on that was it must be revenue neutral. Right. You must bring in the same amount of money for the federal government as the income tax does. So all these economists did all this work. They spent over $20 million researching the thing, and they came up originally with the 23% figure that is in the fair tax. So John, the question is, what studies have been done? That is the original research. And you can find that on FAIRtax.org. There's lots of research up there at FAIRtax.org. You can read about it. But that's not a figure that was just pulled out of the air. Right. These economists determined through massive amounts of research that the 23% rate is what it would take to be revenue neutral. And again, it is a revenue bill. It's not a spending bill. It doesn't favor one side or the other as far as their spending agenda, what it should be spent on, what it shouldn't be spent on. The fair tax simply raises pretty much the same amount of money for the federal government that the income tax does. You still going to have the debate on how to spend it. But that's what this is again. Let me remind everybody again real quick of our phone number. It's not up on the screen yet. Hopefully it will be in a minute. 888-787-8023. 888-787-8023. We are coming to you live. It's 11:44 a.m. Eastern Time on October the 24th. And if your clock and calendar match with that, we'd love to talk to you again. 888-787-8023. 423. Now, Thomas is saying it's time to cut spending. It's my money, and I'm all sober, tired, and it's fun. Well, Thomas, you're right. There are a lot of people who believe the government is spending too much money on too many things, but that is beyond the scope of the fair tax. The fair tax just raises the same amount of money that they're getting now, and then we'll have to have that debate afterwards.
But think of it this way. Congress spends a lot of time messing around with the tax code and trying to figure different ways of changing the tax code to reward their political friends and punish their political enemies. They spend a lot of time on the income part of the equation, and they spend a lot of time on the spending. When we pass the fair tax, the tax code is going to be kind of carved in stone. It's a 23% sales tax. That's it. They can't mess around with it. So half of what Congress is doing now is going to go away. They can concentrate, and we can concentrate on their spending habits.
Now, they can adjust the rate if they have to.
If they have to. But when they do, they can't favor one group over another.
Yeah.
They can adjust the rate.
You adjust the rate, it hits everybody. And funny you should mention this. We keep an eye on Congress.gov, which I have just called up on my computer. You do a search on the string Internal Revenue Code, put those 3 words in quotation marks and put that in the search box and hit go. And if you do that as of this moment, you will get 1,639 hits on that.
Yikes.
That is the degree to which the Congress critters, and yes, Sandy, we do call them Congress critters, that's right, are messing with the tax code. And people, they get away with it because we the people aren't watching.
Yeah.
We the fair tax guys are watching, but most of the other folks out there have no clue the extent to which Congress monkeys with the tax code.
Yeah. Yeah,
and they are, and we need to put a stop to it. And those guys work for us. We got to make them quit that.
Yeah. So, we got anything else of interest here? Dave Boone. Oh yeah, Dave Boone. He's another fair tax expert. European style VAT is record keeping on steroids. Yeah. That's a good way of, because there's these credits and debits on the whole step of, think of what it takes to produce a car. You got to dig the iron ore out of the ground. It has to be refined. And then the iron is smelted into steel, and then on and on and on, all the different parts. Every one of those production steps where you're adding value to that piece of equipment or whatever, the VAT tax, a little VAT tax is added. He's right. The record keeping would be horrendous, and Congress likes complicated stuff like that, don't they?
That's a good point, David, because the record keeping under the fair tax for the individual is nothing.
Yeah,
you pay the tax at the cash register when you buy something, and the record keeping for the retailers like Walmart and Target and folks that are collecting the fair tax is fairly simple. You know how much you've sold, you know how much 23% of that is, send it in. End of story. Your computer does that for you.
Their paperwork for the tax code would be cut by like 80-90%. All of those resources that are going to keep up with the tax code, they can actually use to enhance their business. Well, think of that.
Okay, we're getting a comment here from a name that I'm not going to try because I don't want to butcher it, but you're going to be talking, his question is, the fair tax would not tax lottery winnings, cash and cars, would it?
Yes.
Well,
yes.
You're getting ahead of us here just a little bit. We're planning to vote the entire next week's episodes, which we're going to pre-record shortly after we're done with this one, to talk about that, especially that $1.6 billion, Mega Millions lottery that was just coming on there. The quick answer to your question is no. It will not tax the winning until you spend it. If you save it, if you give it to your kids, there's no tax. Right now, that whoever won that lottery last night is going to have like 25% withheld off the top, and then the government is going to tax the rest of it at 37%. So you're going to end up owing a bunch more when you file your tax return. With the fair tax, if you win that kind of jackpot or any kind of jackpot, you get it in full. The government does not take their pound of flesh off or 15 pounds of flesh off the top before you get it. So your lottery winnings are not taxed. You receive the full gross amount of your lottery winning the same way you get the full gross amount of your paycheck with the fair tax.
Give it away next week's program.
I know. Well, we will talk about that next week in detail. But since we got the question, we figured it out. So that's how that's going to work.
That is on people's mind because that was a huge jackpot that I think is the biggest in history.
One of the biggest in history, yeah. I could do a lot of skydiving with that, but I didn't win. But anyway, I have a theory.
And train rides.
Yeah, the lottery is a tax on greed and stupidity. You know what it has? People get greedy and they don't realize just how long the odds are. Somebody did win, though. Comment from Sam Brown here. I've been waiting a long time for the fair tax to get some traction. Any predictions on when we will see real movement on it? We will see real movement on it when enough people tell their Congress critters that we demand it.
Yeah. And, you know, there's a way that you can reach into the White House, too. If you go to whitehouse.gov/contact, the website, whitehouse.gov/contact, and you can do this on a daily basis. It's not like one and done, okay? And tell the president that he really needs to endorse the fair tax. If you want real tax reform, now what they did last December helps, but you can see all the constant proposals to change the tax code. Nothing was changed in that part of it. So Congress is constantly trying to change the tax code. So what happened in Congress last December and with the president reducing regulations prior to that, that's what the fair tax will do, but on a permanent basis where Congress can't mess around with it. I mean, think about that. Everything that they did in December, plus the reduction of regulations, government regulations, that will be permanent under the fair tax. What a boost. What a boost to the small businesses of the country.
Sandy notes real quick here, that means interest on your bank account would not be taxed either. Any money you make from any source, any way, is not taxed until you spend it with the fair tax.
That's right.
So it doesn't matter. Well, I imagine there's some folks that would get some in a dishonest manner. So there are people who are not reporting the activities that they engage in for the fair. They will be taxed under the fair tax.
That's right. Yeah, because they're going to buy stuff at the store, and when they do, they're going to pay
how much you get
on
and how you get it makes absolutely no difference under the fair tax. You are taxed when you make a retail purchase of new goods or services. Again, we've noted that you can avoid the fair tax legally by buying used items rather than, and of course, pre-owned homes and used cars are probably the biggest ticket items that you could use to not pay the fair tax on those. I would not suggest buying used groceries. We've mentioned that before. But anyhow, I thought that was going to sail right over your head there, Ron.
No.
But, Randy is saying send a daily message to the president. You can do that, whitehouse.gov/contact, and just tell, because it's going to take somebody like President Trump who has the bully pulpit, and people will listen to him.
Or his vice president, who was a fair tax co-sponsor when he was in Congress.
Yeah, but can you imagine what would happen if the president of the United States, be it Donald Trump or his successor or another successor down the road, whoever that might be, if the president of the United States would jump on the fair tax? Now, of course, whoever's in the other political party would probably find would oppose him just on principle, just the way we're so politically
polarized,
divided these days. But anyhow, that would put. Well, I am convinced, Ron, that once the fair tax becomes a serious part of the national discussion regarding taxes, we win hands down.
Yeah.
We get
when
rid
people
of the,
really, as we say, when you understand it, you'll demand it. And that includes the media, because the media is woefully ignorant about the fair tax. There's almost an embargo on talking about the fair tax on the media. Which is very sad, but it'll happen. I like the comment from Sandy there for a few minutes ago. She said technically it's defacing money, but she puts www.fairtax.org on all the money that she spends.
Hey, that's a good idea. I may get a rubber stamp that does that.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And Sam Brown here is saying, I'd like the fact that it would eliminate tax evasion. We've talked about that problem here on the radio show for a long time. It is extremely easy to evade the income tax. You just simply, under-report your income, over-report deductions. With the fair tax, it's included in the price of things you buy, and the vendor from whom you are buying it is incentivized to charge the tax, so they get to keep a little bit of everything they collect.
That's right.
It is going to be extremely difficult to evade the fair tax, and tax evasion is a billion-dollar problem that is getting worse by the day. And I'm convinced that one of these days the Congress critters are going to see that and realize that we got to fix the system, because it's just letting too much money slip through their hands, and you know how they love to spend it.
About a year and a half ago, the Americans for Fair Taxation finished a study. Well, they commissioned somebody at a university to update a study on evasion. It's a horrible problem. This year in 2018, the projection is over $700 billion that's not being collected by the IRS that should be collected because people are evading it. They're just either underreporting their income, over-reporting their deductions.
Or they're working for cash under the table.
Yeah, or they're just not reporting income at all. It unfortunately is very easy to get away with. So who makes up for that? Because you still have to have a certain amount to run the government. Well, we make up for it, or the debt gets worse. Now just think of how we could help pay down the debt if we had an extra $700 billion. And the projection is for it to get worse every year, but that by 2026, the evasion is going to be over $1 trillion a year. All right, this is not a good situation. All right, he's right. The evasion is a huge problem, and most of it goes away with the fair tax because it's very difficult to evade a sales tax.
Oh, this is funny. David is saying, my crystal ball sees a visit from the FBI for you in the future, Sandy, if you're defacing your money. She's come back, well, I've already spent it. So if you do that, don't sign your name, okay? Yeah. I think she's smart enough not to do that. Yeah. So somebody put it in there, I have no clue. So it's there. That's like the fair tax. It's anonymous. You don't know who did it.
So good comments from our Facebook friends. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Right. And I tell you what, we're just about out of time here on this edition of FairTax Power Radio. We got a couple of minutes left.
We were going to talk about, what a candidate who is a proponent of the fair tax, how they should respond if their opponent goes after them. And we got a bunch of these things.
Yeah, we're getting a comment here from James Martin. The political will to pass the fair tax and give up the ability to manipulate the tax code for favors will never happen. There's just too much corruption in D.C. Well, they said they'd never fly to the moon. They said that women would never vote. There are a lot of things that they said would never happen. The Titanic would never sink, for one of them. But it will take, it's going to be a big rock to push. I mean, there's a lot of inertia with the income tax, but it's not impossible. That's why we're on the air. We've been doing this for years. We're going to keep doing it until the fair tax passes. So, James, if you would just kind of get out there and help us push, we will get this done.
Yep. That's good sentiment. All right.
How would real quick? We touched this before. Sam is asking, how would Social Security be funded, and would that system remain in place? Yes, Social Security would be funded with proceeds out of the fair tax. It's in the bill that a certain percentage of the fair tax revenue is earmarked for Social Security. The Social Security, FICA payroll tax goes away. Right. But the funding is now spread out over a larger tax base than just people who are working for paychecks. Ditto for Medicare. So, yeah, the Social Security system will continue to work, and it will be funded directly out of fair tax revenues. So
in fact, I would go so far as to say that the fair tax will save Social Security and Medicare, because the funding will be on a much more sound basis, much broader basis. Everybody who makes a purchase of a new product or service in this country will be supporting Social Security and Medicare, because somewhere around 35% of the proceeds from the fair tax must go to Social Security and Medicare. That's written into the bill.
Oh, Sandy hit one out of the park here. Don't tell me the sky's the limit when there are footprints on the moon. Good one, Sandy. I'm going to steal that. No problem with that.
I like that.
We got a couple of minutes left. We got to talk about the logo store real quick. We always do.
Yep. Okay. Well, you can get these things at the FairTax logo store.
Yeah. Walk up to a candidate's town hall and say, "Do you support that?"
And if not, why not?
Yes.
All right.
Absolutely.
You can get pens, which we recommend. Buy a bunch of these pens. When you go out to dinner and you sign the check, leave the pen. It's got good fair tax information on there, and you will get people's attention. Okay? There's these little things. Rudy Tremmel is our fair tax, one of our board member who's in charge of the FairTax logo store. And a couple of months ago, he came up with these things. All right. It's a strobe light. It can be used as a flashlight. This may not look very bright here, but at night that would be bright, okay? And it's got magnets, so you could use it like if you're working on your car or something like that, all right? Pins, these things are very good for generating interest, all right? You wear them on your shirt, put them on the strap of your purse. And these palm cards with lots of good information on them. And the little ones, the business-sized cards, got basic information about the fair tax on one side and the prebate schedule on the back side. So, and there's a lot of other things. There's hats, there's shirts, there's jackets, there's little lunch pouches, all kinds of FAIRtax paraphernalia there. Show your support with the FAIRtax by going to fairtaxlogostore.org. Purchase something and, show it off to your friends. Let them see that you are indeed a proponent of the FAIRtax.
Indeed. All right. Thanks for all the comments we've gotten. Sandy, I'm going to steal your line about the footprints on the moon. No doubt about that.
Yeah.
But we're going to have to wrap it up, do it to it for this edition of the FAIRtax Power Radio. Be with us again this time next Wednesday. Next show will be pre-recorded. But as it's streaming on Facebook, we will be live with comments if you have other things that we'd like to talk about. Until then, I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Walero.
We are the FAIRtax Guys, reminding you that the FAIRtax is America's big solution. And once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
Oh, these income tax forms are way too complicated. There's got to be a better way. Who are you?
we're the FAIRtax Guys.
We've got a big solution for you.
What's that?
It's the FAIRtax. Completely eliminates the federal income tax system as we know it. No more withholding, no more payroll taxes, no more tax returns ever, no more IRS. All gone. And I guarantee you, once you understand it,
You'll demand it.
Yeah.